The sky was a canvas of molten gold and deep azure as Flight 731 soared effortlessly through the heavens. Inside the cockpit, Captain David Reiner glanced at the altimeter and smiled. It had been a smooth journey so far, textbook perfect. First Officer Elena Vasquez, seated to his right, adjusted her headset and nodded at him. "Clear skies ahead," she said, her voice laced with the kind of confidence that came from years of experience. The hum of the engines provided a soothing backdrop as the plane glided above the world, far removed from the chaos below. In the cabin, passengers settled into their routines. Some scrolled through their phones, while others chatted softly or gazed out the windows. A child's laughter rang out, a sweet counterpoint to the faint announcements over the intercom. Flight attendants moved gracefully down the aisles, distributing drinks and snacks with practiced efficiency. To anyone on board, it was just another uneventful flight. But deep within the bowels of the aircraft, where cables snaked like veins and hydraulic systems thrummed with life, something was amiss. A faint hiss, almost imperceptible, whispered through the metal confines. In the cockpit, a series of warning lights blinked to life, their urgency cutting through the serene atmosphere. Captain Reiner's smile faded as he leaned forward, his eyes scanning the displays. "Elena, check the hydraulic systems," he instructed, his tone calm but firm. Elena's fingers danced over the controls, her brow furrowed. "It's the left engine," she reported. "Pressure is dropping fast." Reiner's mind raced. He'd trained for scenarios like this countless times, but the reality of facing a potential failure always carried an edge of unpredictability. "Run the checklist," he said. Together, they moved with precision, following the protocols drilled into them. Despite their efforts, the situation escalated. Alarms blared, and the once placid cockpit became a hive of activity. The intercom crackled as Reiner addressed the passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're experiencing a minor technical issue, and will be making an unscheduled landing as a precaution. Please remain seated and follow the instructions of the crew." His voice was steady, betraying none of the tension he felt. In the cabin, the mood shifted. Faces that had been relaxed and carefree now bore expressions of concern. A murmur spread through the passengers as they exchanged worried glances. Flight attendants worked to reassure them, their smiles unwavering despite the undercurrent of fear. Back in the cockpit, the situation grew more dire. The left engine had lost power entirely, and the aircraft was losing altitude. Reiner's hands gripped the controls, his knuckles white. "We're diverting to Carson Regional," he said. Elena nodded, already coordinating with air traffic control. "Mayday, mayday. This is Flight 731, Elena transmitted. Her voice, though steady, carried an edge of urgency. "We've lost an engine and are losing altitude. Requesting immediate clearance for emergency landing." The response from the ground was swift but laced with tension. "Flight 731, Carson Regional is ready. You're clear for runway 27. Wind at your back, 12 knots. As the plane descended, the cockpit filled with a cacophony of warning sounds. Elena read off altitude and speed, her voice a lifeline in the chaos. Reiner's focus narrowed, every ounce of his being dedicated to getting the plane and its passengers safely to the ground. Yet, despite their best efforts, the aircraft continued to lose stability. Suddenly, a sharp jolt rocked the plane. Passengers screamed, their fear palpable. In the cockpit, Reiner and Elena struggled to regain control. "What the hell was that?" Elena exclaimed. Reiner's eyes darted to the displays. "Structural failure," he said grimly. "We're in for a rough landing." As the ground loomed closer, Reiner's voice filled the cockpit. "Brace for impact. Elena, send one last transmission." Her fingers flew over the controls as she relayed their position and status. "To anyone listening," she said, her voice steady despite the terror gripping her, "we're going down." The plane's descent was rapid and uneven. Trees blurred past the windows, and the sound of tearing metal filled the air. In those final moments, time seemed to stretch, every second an eternity. And then, with a deafening crash, Flight 731 met the Earth, its journey ending in a cacophony of fire and destruction. The hum of the old spacecraft's engines fills the small cockpit, a steady rhythm that echoes in the silence. Captain Alara Lawson stares at the vast expanse of space outside, her fingers lightly tracing the control panel as the stars seem to pulse in and out of focus. The glow of distant galaxies is the only light, and the silence of the void stretches endlessly around them. Alara inhales deeply, her breath shaky. It's been 3 years since they embarked on this mission, 3 years since they left Earth to explore the farthest reaches of the universe. Her crew was once a group of eager pioneers, united by their thirst for discovery. Now, the ship is a graveyard of their hopes and dreams, each crewmate lost to the harshness of space. She looks across the cockpit at the lone surviving member of the crew, Lieutenant Rax, a quiet, intense individual. He's hunched over his console, monitoring the transmission systems. His sharp features are shadowed in the dim light, his eyes scanning the data with a laser focus. He doesn't speak much, but Alara has come to rely on his quiet efficiency. The transmission system is their last hope, an attempt to reach Earth and send a final message. The ship is crippled, resources are running low, and their oxygen levels are dangerously close to depletion. They've drifted far beyond known space, and no one knows where they are anymore. Anything yet? Alara asks, her voice breaking the stillness. It's been days since their last attempt to establish contact. The radio waves are fragmented, distorted. Rax doesn't look up, but his fingers continue to dance over the controls. Still no response, he mutters, his voice low but steady. We're too far out. The signal is too weak. Alara nods, her gaze returning to the endless void. A shiver runs down her spine. Not from the cold, but from the realization that they may never make it home. That their message will never reach its destination. As time passes, the silence becomes unbearable. Rax's eyes flicker toward the captain, his expression unreadable. Alara opens her mouth to speak, to offer something comforting, but the words won't come. She sighs and presses a button on the console in front of her. A soft beep sounds, followed by the hum of the ship's artificial intelligence. Activate the backup transmission, she commands. Rax's hands freeze on the console. He looks at her sharply. Captain, the backup system hasn't been operational for months. It could drain the remaining power, and we'll lose everything. We don't have a choice, Alara says, her tone firm. We either send something now or we die in silence. We owe it to everyone back home. There's a long pause. Rax hesitates, then nods and begins working furiously at the controls. The backup transmission system whirs to life, a dull red light flashing on the dashboard as power surges into the system. Alara watches as the signal's strength slowly builds, the thin line on the monitor representing their connection to Earth inching upward. But it's still weak. Too weak. Alara, Rax says, breaking her concentration. It might not be enough. The data we're sending, it's fragmented. It might never be decoded. I don't care, she replies, her voice barely above a whisper. At least someone will know what happened to us. For a long moment, neither of them speaks. The hum of the ship's engine is the only sound as the transmission continues to pulse in the background. The stars outside seem to shimmer and blur, the edges of reality fading as the weight of their situation presses down on them. Alara glances at Rax one last time, her eyes meeting his. She can see the strain in his face, the exhaustion, the sorrow. He's been holding it together for so long, just like her. But even the strongest of them are starting to break. I'm sorry, she says quietly. I never wanted this. Rax doesn't respond. He doesn't need to. The words are hollow now. Too much time has passed, too many sacrifices made. Their fate is already sealed. In the corner of her eye, Alara notices a small blinking light on the console. It's the signal strength indicator. It's higher than before, just a little, but enough to give her a flicker of hope. She sits up straighter. Is that? She begins. Rax glances at the screen and nods slowly. It's a response. We're receiving something. Alara's heart skips a beat. Is it Earth? I don't know. It's too faint. Too distorted. Try to boost the signal, Alara urges. She feels a sense of urgency rising within her, as though this is their last chance to connect with the outside world. Rax works quickly, fingers moving over the console with practiced precision. The transmission comes through in bursts, short, fragmented pieces of data. Alara leans forward, trying to make sense of the garbled messages. Then, something finally breaks through the static of voice.
Weak. Trembling.
Captain Lawson, is anyone there? Alara's breath catches in her throat. The voice. It's Earth. It's someone from a station. Someone alive. Hello, she gasps, her voice trembling. This is Captain Alara Lawson. We were here. We made it. Can you hear me? There's a long pause, and then the voice crackles again. Captain Lawson? We've been searching, we never stopped. Tears well up in Alara's eyes as the weight of everything, the isolation, the despair, the endless silence, begins to lift, even if just for a moment. We're here, she says, her voice steady now. We're still here. The connection crackles again, the static intensifying as if the universe itself is fighting against their reunion. Alara grips the edge of her seat, every fiber of her being focused on the faint, distant voice. Captain Lawson, the voice breaks through the static once more, now clearer but still strained. We've been tracking your ship's signature. We're at the edge of the solar system, preparing a rescue mission. Stay with us. Just stay with us. We're coming. Alara's pulse quickens, a wave of relief crashing over her. She presses her palm to her forehead, trying to steady herself as the reality of it all begins to settle in. They were going to make it. After everything, the endless days of isolation, the doubts, the creeping cold, they were going to make it back. She looks over at Rax, who is still seated, his fingers dancing across the console in an almost mechanical fashion. His face is impassive, but Alara knows him well enough to read the tension in his jaw, the furrow of his brow. He's holding it together, but just barely. They both are. Lieutenant, she says, her voice breaking the silence. We've got a chance. We're not alone. Rax doesn't respond right away, and Alara wonders if he's heard the transmission, or if he's too lost in his own thoughts. She rises slowly from her seat, walking over to where he's working, her legs shaky from the adrenaline now coursing through her. Rax, she repeats, more urgently this time. We're not alone anymore. He blinks and turns to face her, his expression unreadable for a long moment. Then, for the briefest of seconds, she sees it, the faintest glimmer of relief in his eyes. It disappears as quickly as it came, replaced by his usual stoicism. We've got to hold it together, he mutters, eyes flicking back to the console. They're coming for us. But there's no guarantee they'll make it in time. Alara knows he's right. They don't know how far out they are, and even with a rescue mission in progress, time is still a luxury they don't have. The fuel reserves are nearly depleted. The oxygen supply is critical. And the ship, once a marvel of technology, is now a dying relic of their lost mission. We'll make it, Alara says firmly, though the doubt still lingers. We've come this far. We can hold on a little longer. The voice crackles through the speakers again, a little stronger now. Captain Lawson, can you confirm your coordinates? We need your exact location to expedite the rescue. Alara hurries to her console, pulling up the star maps. The coordinates blink back at her, a familiar string of numbers, though they feel utterly alien in this moment. She presses a few buttons, sending the data to Earth's transmission array. Coordinates sent, she says. Her voice is steady now, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of emotions inside her. A moment later, the response comes, we've received the coordinates. Prepare for extraction. It'll take us several days to reach you. We're coming. The transmission ends, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. The moment feels surreal, like a dream, too good to be true. Alara stares at the empty space in front of her, her mind racing. We have to hold out for just a few more days, she whispers, more to herself than to Rax. Rax looks up at her, his expression unreadable. He doesn't say anything, but there's a change in the way he looks at her. Something unspoken passes between them. They both know the odds. They both know the dangers. But right now, in this moment, they're not alone. They have a chance. The faint hum of the ship's engine is the only sound that fills the room as the transmission system continues to blink. The connection to Earth is still there, fragile but real. Alara sinks back into her seat, allowing herself a breath she didn't realize she was holding. She closes her eyes, imagining Earth, imagining the green fields, the bustling cities, the laughter of families and friends. It all seems so far away now, like a different life. But it's still there. It's still real. We'll make it, she repeats to herself, almost as a mantra. We'll make it. Rax doesn't reply, but she knows he's heard her. The ship is still drifting, still adrift in the vast emptiness of space, but for the first time in months, Alara feels a flicker of hope. It's enough to keep her going.